Welcome to The Growth Show with me as your host, Joe Camerato. I am an entrepreneur who created my company, National Business Capital, from literally $0 out of my spare bedroom to over $2 billion in business loans secured for entrepreneurs nationwide. Since 2007, I have seen just about every type of business. I provide money and help entrepreneurs access capital to scale fast, but I also know that it's possible for you as you scale to replace yourself, to build systems, processes, and great teams of people that can live on without you so you can actually enjoy your life and your company can still grow. I will not only tell you the peaks and valleys of my story, but I will also bring on world-class entrepreneurs to tell their stories and share their lessons on their growth journeys. Welcome to The Growth Show. All right. Welcome to The Growth Show with me as your host, Joe Camerato. So happy to be here today. As you know, the show is all about people growing, pushing themselves out of their comfort zone to be better. And I have a really cool and interesting and unique special guest today, William Trubridge, and he has broken some amazing world records. William is the world's deepest man, having freedived unaided on a single breath to a depth of 333 feet. Truly amazing. William has also broken the world record multiple times in the free immersion discipline, most recently with 406 feet at Vertical Blue on May of 2016. And he's also a keynote speaker and helps other people neutralize their stress and fears through sharing his deepest dives. So really exciting. Thanks for being on the show. I think what's interesting, folks, is that I think the diving is a byproduct, and it really is all about controlling your mindset, which I think I was really excited to talk to William about today. If you feel differently, please correct me, William, but without controlling your mindset, you wouldn't be able to do what you're doing. And thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So you're right. It's an intensely mental sport. All sport is physical as well. You can't subtract that component. But the mental side is equally important. You can't just kind of muscle your way down to 330 feet and back. You have to be in complete control. And critically, maybe unlike a lot of sports, it goes in the other direction in the sense that you don't want to be in a kind of elevated hyper adrenaline state. You want to be as relaxed as possible because that's the most oxygen efficient that you can be. So the more that you're kind of anxious or nervous or stressed, or the more that your brain is functioning, the more that you're actually burning the oxygen before the dive even begins. So it's all about being able to control that and slow your mind and stay relaxed and calm. And yeah, as we're seeing, that has huge applications to all walks of life, because in most kind of stressful, high pressure situations, you don't need to be able to lift 100 kilos or sprint 100 meters very fast. You need to be able to kind of stay clear-headed, think logically, and without emotion. So the same techniques that we use in freediving have huge application to those areas as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think living a great personal life, and then also growing and building a business. I think it all really goes back to a great mindset. And especially, my audience are entrepreneurs, business owners, CEOs that are, growing, pushing the limits, and, taking on, a lot of stress in whatever it is that they're doing in their companies. And I think we, in the last few years, we've all gone through, stressful situations. So, in those moments, I know personally, I wouldn't have been able to get through some of the challenging times in life and in business if I wasn't able to keep my mindset in check. And I talk about that all the time with business owners. So I'm really fascinated to really hear from you today and understand how you've been able to do that, and some techniques that you use to help getting down to 333 feet on a single breath. I mean, I have one of those pools where you don't really it doesn't have a deep end. It's kind of like the same. And I lose my breath going down, about 4 or 5 feet. So I think it's unbelievable that it's just fascinated to hear about that. But just curious, before we jump into that, how did you get started into like, what in the world got you into, free diving, and, take us back to kind of how it all started.
Sure, yeah. So as a kid, I was born in the north of England, but my family decided to sell the house, sell everything, and buy a sailing boat and sail across the Atlantic, Caribbean, Pacific Oceans to get to New Zealand over the course of several years. This is back in the early 80s when there's no like satellite navigation or anything like that. So it was a pretty kind of daring adventure to take two young kids. I was about two at the time. And so my earliest memories are all of living on a boat, and the sea was our playground, our school, our supermarket, our highway, everything. And
Wow.
so that's where the kind of the love of the ocean was instilled in me. But I didn't find out about the sport of freediving until I was in my early 20s. And it was kind of like coming home. Like as soon as I tried it again, I was hooked. And I knew that I wanted to dedicate myself to this and see how deep I could go, but also try and kind of explore the limits of human aquatic potential. How deep are we as a species? Like how much can we assimilate or kind of become part of the aquatic world? So that's been the ultimate journey for me.
Yeah, how did you learn to like hold your breath? Like, was that something that you self-taught, or did you work with a coach, or
So interestingly, we all have a pretty good capacity for breath hold. I mean, I could take you into your pool tomorrow, give you some tips and breathing techniques, do some drills, and by the end of the day, you'd be holding your breath 3-4 minutes probably.
wow.
I've been working with a lot of the chapters of the Entrepreneurs Organization and teaching these techniques to CEOs and entrepreneurs like yourself. And it's incredible, like the difference between the expectation of what people think that they're going to be able to do, which is normally like 20, 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and what people realize, which is without almost any exception, like 2 minutes plus. We had one lady recently who did 5 minutes, and she had never held her breath before. So we have this
Wow.
capacity. It's about realizing it, using the right techniques, and those techniques principally come down to relaxation and control of the mind.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, like, what I'm assuming leading up into one of your dives, or teaching people this, is there like an extra? There's got to be like, is there some sort of like an exercise or priming or a meditation that you go into to get yourself into that mindset?
Yeah, a lot of it is I talk about like what is actually happening in your body, because the urge to breathe itself doesn't come from kind of some life or death, running out of oxygen that's happening in your system. Is just the buildup of the waste gas, carbon dioxide. And if we measure your oxygen levels when you get that first urge to breathe, they're still probably, in terms of saturation of your arterial blood, at close to 100%. So it's all about just recognizing that it's CO2, it's not causing any damage, there's no problems at all. You still have a huge capacity beyond that initial urge to breathe. And then it's about like using mental techniques to kind of just cope with the intensity of those sensations, because they don't go away, and they just kind of build up and get stronger and stronger. But we can recognize that those sensations, that urge to breathe, at the end of the day, it's just information. It's just data coming to our awareness. And it's a kind of like a sleight of hand or a mental trick that doesn't necessarily come straight away, but it's a similar kind of thing to most people would have an experience where, like, if you're walking past a table or something, you kick your foot on the table leg and it hurts a lot, but you look down at the toe and the nail isn't split, the toe looks fine, you can wiggle it, it's not broken, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just at that point it's only pain. There's no kind of negative connotation to the pain, right? And so
Yeah.
once you realize that, you can just kind of turn off that pain. You can ignore it to a certain extent. And so it's a similar thing with a breath hold. Once you realize that that urge to breathe is coming from CO2 buildup, it's not life or death, then you can, you never escape from it, but you can quell it to a certain extent. And a lot of the work that we do with people on neutralizing stress and anxiety is along those same lines. just recognizing the sensation for what it really is, which is just information coming to your awareness. In the same way you're hearing my voice now, you're hearing a voice in your head. It's both cases, it's just coming out of the ether. Like, you're not choosing my words, and neither are you choosing your own words that pop into your head. It's just information that's coming to your awareness. And so those negative thoughts that we sometimes get, like, I'm a loser, I'm not going to be able to do this, that kind of stuff, you can see those as also just information coming to your awareness. So that's part of it. That's the mental part. And then there's the physical part, which revolves around using the breath to reverse engineer calmness in the body. And that sounds difficult, but it's easy as just breathing into your belly through your nose.
Yeah, I've done like a Wim Hof event before, and kind of bringing that like breath in, and really you're like almost essentially building up the oxygen, I guess, into.
Can I talk to that a little bit? Because I've met Wim Hof, he's an amazing guy. A lot of what goes into a lot of his content is actually not aligned with the science. And when you're told that you're breathing more oxygen into your body, you can prove in 2 seconds that that's not actually the case. Your oxygen saturation in your blood right now is 100%. If you put a pulse oximeter, one of those little things they clip on at the hospital, on your finger, that will measure 100% right now. And you're not doing anything special, right? So if it's 100%, how much more can we go beyond that? Like, you can't be 110% saturated.
Got it. Yeah.
You can't fill this bottle to more than 100% full. It's impossible. So there's no technique of breathing that can increase your oxygen levels. And the Wim Hof method actually decreases your CO2 levels. So it decreases that waste gas before you then hold your breath, which is actually quite dangerous. And there's been a number of fatality, like most of the cases of people who black out and die in a swimming pool or spearfishing have involved excessive breathing, which lowers the level of CO2 and takes away that alarm system. So it's doesn't have a benefit in terms of oxygen, and it makes things more dangerous.
Wow.
There's some benefits to other things, like maybe for cold tolerance, that kind of stuff. But in terms of holding your breath, I just have to say, like, I can't stress it enough. Do not do anything around the Wim Hof method or any kind of hyperventilation if you are going to be holding your breath.
Got it. And so from what you practice, is it really more going into the mental control and like calming your nerves and your body, I guess?
Exactly, yeah. Because we realize that we cannot actually escape that CO2, and we don't want to, because it's the safety gas. It's the one that gives us these signals, and also because it's a gas, without going too much into the physiology, it triggers your body to be more oxygen efficient. So it puts you into low oxygen, like oxygen economy mode. So we want that as well.
Interesting.
So it's more important for us to maintain that CO2, so don't breathe too much, and then just learn to live with it, to cope with it. So it's not an easier technique. Like if we do the Wim Hof method, you hold your breath 2-3 minutes on the very first time. But with my method, we'll have to build up to that, but it's safer and more enduring, more long-lasting.
Makes sense. And how would you say, like, a business owner listening to this, how does that, so that you're prepping for that, to hold your breath, to go underwater, how does that help when in a stressful situation, right? Business, okay. Things happen, come up, like it's a constant mental roller coaster. Just curious how you've even used that. You're a business owner as well. Like, how would you translate this to other fellow, entrepreneurs?
Sure. So with regards to the breathing, when you're in that kind of a setting, and I've taught this to like hedge fund investors who manage portfolios of tens of billions of dollars, because they're kind of stressing out about stock markets that never go to sleep. There's the one in America, but then there's one also in India. So they're kind of constantly in this activated, stressed state, and that's fight or flight mode. When you're in that state, your body's releasing adrenaline and cortisol, and it's depleting it. Over the long run, it will kind of wear you to the ground. But also in that state, we cannot use our prefrontal cortex as clearly. It's more the amygdala, the emotive brain, that's kind of brought to the front. So in order to be able to think clearly, and in order to be able to endure and last longer in those situations, we have to be able to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of fight or flight. Fight or flight is sympathetic. The parasympathetic is sometimes called rest and digest, but it's basically the nervous system that promotes kind of calmness and a resting state. And if you can be in a stressful situation and be in a parasympathetic activation, then you can think more clearly. You're not going to you're going to respond rather than react. You're going to be a lot more accurate in your decision making, and critically, you're not going to kind of fly off the handle into emotive decision making or language or interactions. Like if it's because this applies to kind of personal life as well. If you're in an argument with your spouse, then if you are kind of running on the sympathetic nervous system and angry and emotive and yelling, that's one thing. But if you're able to detach yourself from that and stay calm, then obviously you stand a much better chance of coming through that in a positive way, right? So it's all about sympathetic nervous system activation, and that can be reverse engineered by the way that you breathe, by breathing in a specific way. And the first thing that I tell people to do, if there's one thing that I would recommend, like someone when they recognize, shit, I'm at it again, like I'm angry or I'm stressed out or like I'm not thinking clearly because this is all getting to my head. When you recognize that, take a moment, exhale, and hold for 3 seconds. Doesn't take like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or anything more. Just 3 seconds with more or less empty lungs. And in that 3 seconds, you prepare your next breath and your next thought. So you have a 3-second pause. And a lot of the time that's enough just to kind of create like a fire stop where you can detach from those emotions and then choose to breathe into the belly using the diaphragm through the nose. And that activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And then also choose what kind of thought you're going to have next.
Interesting. So basically you're exhaling, holding for 3 seconds, then breathing in through your nose and choosing your thoughts wisely, so to speak.
Yeah. So you can just try it now. Just like, you can take a breath in or just like do it like a soft sigh out and then hold and just do a slow count to 3. Exhale out. Just count softly to 3. And in that 3 seconds, you're preparing to breathe through your nose and just into your belly. Good. Doesn't have to be a full breath. Like if you start to engage your chest, the difference between chest breathing and belly breathing, when we breathe into the chest, the stretch receptors in the intercostal muscles here send a signal to the brain to tell your brain to activate the fight or flight sympathetic nervous system. That's why when we're gasping,
And you get
stressed out, right?
freaked out. Got it. So don't go too far.
Yeah, you don't want to go to the point where your shoulders start to come up. But if you just breathe into the belly, so it's just, and the belly comes out, but this hand in your chest or your shoulders stay still, so it's just that breath into the belly, then the stretch receptors in the diaphragm send a signal to the brain to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, so to calm you down.
Which is calming. Got it.
As simple as that. It's a feedback loop, so then your brain's more calm, so then you're more likely to continue breathing through your nose into your diaphragm and staying calm. So either way, you're spiraling, but you can choose to spiral downwards or to spiral upwards, depending on how you breathe.
And also too, when you're aggravated, you're like basically like all that's happening. I feel like your body is in that your chest is more, I feel like you're more breathing in your chest. You're more tense up top. That's
Absolutely.
actually really interesting. And then that's just like feeding the loop of spiraling up.
Yeah, or I'd say spiraling down into kind of like, like
spiraling down a bad rabbit hole.
I guess spiraling up in elevated state. Yeah, so if you see someone who's having a panic attack or an asthma attack or anything like that, you will always see that they're
they're like, yep,
that
panic breathing,
this anxiety or this stress. So yeah, we have to kind of hack into that and breathe into the belly through the nose. And so just that 3-second pause is enough time just to say, okay, yeah, I recognize I'm in this state. Now I'm going to breathe the correct way into my belly. And my next thought, I'm going to recognize that whatever it is, it's just information coming to my awareness.
Wow, got it. I'm going to practice that. I love it. Good stuff. I appreciate the helpful tips. And is this because you have your mental immune system? So I'm assuming, is this a part of your mental immune system?
Yeah, this is a big part of it. The idea, the reason why I called it a mental immune system is because in the heat of the moment, if we have to remember to do this technique, even if it's the 3-second hold, for instance, or any kind of style of breathing, if we have to remember to do something, then that's the hurdle. That's the most difficult thing, because when you get into an argument, you're already just thrown into this state, right? Or if you're kind of getting gradually more and more stressed out, like the day is just going on and things are getting worse, you're not really thinking about like what's happening inside. You're just kind of trying to get through it. So if the technique is something that requires conscious control, it's never going to work. It has to be subconsciously controlled. It has to be in the same way that our physical immune system attacks viruses, pathogens, without us telling it, like, okay, send the white blood cells to my wrist. I've got a cut there with infection. If it relied on that, it would never work. It has to be in the background. And the same thing with the mental immune system. It has to be something that's subconsciously controlled. And so the game changer with this system is that we have to program the subconscious. We have to basically, I call it a patch, because we're writing this new kind of like software code, and then we're downloading that into the subconscious mind. So we're kind of putting a patch on the existing system, which is like an archaic one that's left over from the time when most of the time stress involved like a saber-toothed tiger or a cave bear or an enemy tribe, or something that we actually did need to respond to with the fight or flight reflex. We don't need that. Like 99 times out of 100 now, we don't need that reflex. We want the calming one. So we're uploading this patch onto the subconscious mind, re-scripting our subconscious program to stress or anxiety or depression or whatever is ailing us. And that's the game changer, because then in these situations, you actually realize, like before you even realize that you're stressed out or anxious or that things are going wrong, you notice that your breathing has changed and that the way you're using your mind has changed. And then you're like, okay, yeah, well, that's because I'm going through whatever this is at the moment. But that's happened without you telling it to happen. It's happened as a response to the stimulus of this stress or anxiety. And when you get to that point, then it's working.
So you really have to practice it. So essentially you're saying you have to really practice the breathing, really consistently. So you can really recognize, like, well, my breathing's out of whack, to bring yourself back down.
It does require practice, and that's basically how we reprogram things, is through kind of exercising the muscle. But surprisingly little. Like the human brain has an extraordinary level of plasticity. Like we can change the kind of operating system that we're running in our brain so quickly. It has kind of one of the highest levels of plasticity of any species. And even with something that's as deeply ingrained as our response to stress or anxiety, we can shift that around fairly rapidly, just with tweaks. And they're easy things. It's not like you have to kind of tackle the biggest. It's actually better not to try and implement this with the biggest stresses or anxieties, because you're less likely to be successful 100% of the time. Whereas if you tackle the small things like stuck in traffic or someone steps in front of you in a line, those kind of like little instances of minor stress or anxiety, then you build up a positive feedback loop that tells your subconscious mind, this is the technique that works in the situation. This is what I want you to do. And it's back there, like taking notes, writing it down. And before very long at all, it will become a natural response, like an automatic reflex to these situations, rather than something that you actually have to kind of control yourself.
Love it. I think it makes a ton of sense, and I can see how all this stuff makes sense on being able to hold your breath and dive, but also, really using it in everyday life. And it's really amazing. A lot of it's all really goes back to breathing, and then controlling your mind. It's pretty wild. It's actually so simple, and it's a shame like how many people don't do this, that are dealing with anxiety, and they'll get like they'll go to their doctor or therapist, they'll get prescribed a prescription, and no one ever prescribes them like a breathing method. Like it's like it's really mind blowing.
Yeah, that's part of my, like the greatest part of my motivation to try and kind of diffuse these techniques as widely as possible, because we are undergoing like a pandemic of mental health problems, and at the top of that list is stress and anxiety disorders. And you're right, you do see people kind of leaning, and even professionals leaning on benzodiazepines or other kind of like anti-anxiety or sleep medicine in order to tackle this. But those kind of fixes come with so many other potentially negative repercussions, especially the stronger stuff like the benzodiazepines. And whereas this has zero collateral, like there's no contraindications, anyone can use it, and there's no kind of drawbacks to using these techniques, because it's our natural system, it's the way our body works. So everyone has access to it, and it really is something that's long lasting in terms of the impact it can have.
Yeah, and it's free, and you could do it anywhere basically, and but you just have to do the work. That's the whole thing. That's where I think people miss this stuff, is because they're not willing to put the time in, and actually do the work. Which is so interesting. Everyone, I think we live in this world, especially in America, we just want to take a pill and be gone with it and not have to do anything. And I think it's a big miss from a lot of people, especially from professionals that don't push people towards things like this first over medication.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you say, it's something that you can do anywhere, anytime. And whereas with those kind of medications, I've seen, like, I don't want to kind of automatically discard them all, because there are some cases when they are obviously necessary. And
of course, yes, yeah.
The amount of damage that they're doing, especially to younger generations, is horrendous. So any kind of like, if we can just get a small number of people off that kind of medication, then yeah, I'd be very, very happy.
Yeah, 100%. Well, how can you talk? You have a book. Your book is called labeled Oxygen, correct?
Yeah,
that's the title of.
That's more of kind
of.
You
talk about this in your book?
At that time, I was using the techniques, but they were kind of like percolating, and they haven't distilled into something that was like user accessible. So I definitely talk about like all the mental components.
Okay.
But it's more of an autobiography that goes into my career and what it's like to freedive. So if anyone is interested in the underwater world and freediving and breath hold, then it could be a good read for those reasons. The mental immune system itself is a system that's online, I think at thementalimmunesystem.com. And it's just a video series with some kind of workbooks and quizzes and other stuff. But it's a short video series that then, once you've kind of digested the information and done the exercises, it will start to have an immediate effect. And even if someone just from this video that I was talking today takes home the idea of this 3-second hold, and every time they find themselves in a situation where they're getting a little bit stressed or anxious or angry or something, they just stop, exhale, hold for a slow count of 3, then breathe through their nose into the diaphragm. Even that can be kind of like a huge game changer for a lot of people. So if they then want to go into the techniques more, then that would be the place to start looking.
Perfect. And you mentioned, I think you said you do some like events and workshops with the Entrepreneurs Organization. I'm a part of YPO and big fan of both organizations. I have a lot of friends in EO, and I'm also very involved in YPO locally here on Long Island. But what are those events that you show up? Because some folks watching maybe in EO, YPO, and I could see this being a great event. You even got me thinking, I wonder if we could do something with our chapter. So just curious, like what do you kind of do there when you do one of those events?
Yeah, so those are in collaboration. I have like a small business called The Rebellion with 2 other partners. And we are traveling to these destinations for like a 2-day workshop to work with the chapters. And we talk about these same techniques, obviously in a lot more detail, but also give the participants a chance to try them out firsthand so that they can kind of like live in their body better. The techniques. So the 2 ways we do that is we take them to a pool and give them a chance to hold their breath and do the breath hold exercises. And then we also take them to a climbing gym and use similar techniques on the climbing wall. So my partner is a climbing instructor, and we've had people who were ready to like quit after kind of a third of the way up the wall because they're intensely afraid of heights, and they're like, no, I'm good, I'm coming down. And we've been able to get them all the way to the top of the wall. Likewise, people who show up at the pool and they're like, oh, I'm not going to do this hold today. I've got a headache, not feeling good. And then they end up holding their breath for like 4 or 5 minutes. So
Wow.
it's still kind of like an introduction to the techniques and to freediving. And we also hold like a longer form retreat, which is here in the Bahamas, where people or teams or groups can come for like a 3 or 4 day retreat. And in that time, we're doing the same kind of exercises and workshops and talks and presentations, but also every day going to this place called Dean's Blue Hole, which is one of the wonders of the world. It's like a 200-meter deep sinkhole in the corner of a lagoon. It's just an incredible place. And we get to free dive in that. It's like warm, deep, still water, stepping off the beach. So those are like a more immersive experience for like a team, or it could be like for a chapter, for like a group of people to come and really dive into the techniques.
That's great. Yeah, I definitely want to connect on that and talk more, and can definitely see that's something I'd be interested in, maybe whether it's with my team or with the chapter. That could be really cool. Well, really great stuff, and it was really great to hear a little bit about your story, how you got started. Amazing that you lived on a boat for the first few years of your life. I give your parents a lot of credit because I know that I couldn't have done that with my children. Yeah. You must have very patient parents. But really amazing. And I love all the stuff that you shared today. And I hope folks listening, try some of this, and I hope it helps, some of the listeners, take control of maybe some of their anxieties and own mindset. What's the best way that folks can find you, William?
So my website is williamtrubridge.com, and on Facebook and Instagram, I think I'm just Will Trubridge or William Trubridge. And then, like I said, the system is housed at mentalimmunesystem.com.
Perfect. And what's, as we wrap here, one growth tip that you would share with fellow CEOs, entrepreneurs, business owners watching the show?
A growth tip. One kind of tenet that I hold for myself, at least in training and in everything I do, is to always try and maintain or hold on to the idea of like a beginner's mind, like that you are a beginner in everything. Because as soon as we feel like we've got something, we're like a pro, then we stagnate, right? But if you always try and hold on to that mindset of no, there's more to learn, there's more to discover, then you're going to be like looking around and taking on board more opportunities, more information.
I love that. Stay curious, and it's all about lifelong learning. So I definitely appreciate that one. Really good stuff. Keep the beginner's mind and keep growing. Thanks for tuning in and watching, and thanks for being here, William. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Joe. Cheers.
You got it. Cheers.